I'm Justin. Nice to meet you. Okay, good. I wasn't sure if you shook or not.
Hello, Bethel. Let's give it up for Joe. Appreciate you folks coming out on this wonderful fall day in New England and Bethel. And we're, I think, giving Joe a treat here, seeing the fall colors, and there's even a gorgeous rainbow in the background, because this truly is the end of the rainbow here with Jo Jorgensen running for president. One of the things that's important about this campaign is helping out our local efforts for liberty. And here in Maine, the state summarily unenrolled 6,240 Mainers from the rolls here and declared them unenrolled, not connected to a party. We have a federal lawsuit about that. I'm one of the plaintiffs in that, and several of the other people here are plaintiffs in that lawsuit. But it's not going so well. The judge has preliminarily ruled that likely that was unconstitutional, but he is so far disinclined to restore all of those people unless we can prove that those people want to be libertarians. So we have some clipboards over here. I appreciate everybody that's a Mainer here that is interested in the Libertarian Party to give us your contact information, because we can't start re-enrolling libertarians until the first of the year. It's all the crazy government nonsense that Joe is trying to help us battle, and I think that this is important for us to get this across. And I have a couple of speakers here before Joe comes up and talks to you that will talk about some of the issues with liberty and ranked choice voting and some of the other things that are important in this election year. First up, I have Justin Caro, who was a Ron Paul delegate and was involved in the state legislature in Alaska, but now he calls Oxford County, Maine his home, and he's working for liberty here. Justin, can I have you come up?
Hey, Justin! Hey, thank you very much. What a great crowd. So, I was thinking about what I was going to say when I got up here today, and I was like, maybe I should start off with a joke, but the only thing that I could come up with was Republicans and Democrats. So we all know they're a joke. But seriously though, it's time that we take on the excusers and the enablers of the red-blue duopoly, okay? People that say voting libertarian is a waste of your vote, they just want to be on the winning team, and you need to challenge them as to why that is. You know, why do they not want to support a very valid, legitimate candidate when all they have for the other options is just some creepy old white pedo? We need to challenge the educational institutions that only support Republicans or Democrats as viable options. We need to challenge the media and other institutions that only put out polls and reports where they consider red versus blue options and don't list the gold, okay? We need to shatter the stigma. You know, what is the real wasted vote? The real wasted vote is continuing to support the red-blue team when we know we're just going to get more of the same that we've always gotten from them. In the almost 50 years that I've been alive, I can't say that I've seen any real difference between them. It's just how are they going to tax us more, take away more of our rights, and how are they going to spend our money in ways that we really don't want it spent. Libertarians provide sensible solutions to real problems that we have. You know, the best way to reduce police violence is to reduce police interaction, and we do that best, as she has suggested, by eliminating all of the victimless crimes. That's where we start right there, because any victimless crime has no place in a free society. You know, reducing taxes and eliminating them completely, getting rid of government theft through taxation and forfeiture will go a long ways to restoring our economy and restoring our liberty. And throughout history, a number of people have made these calls to freedom and warnings of tyranny. Historically, people like Thomas Paine. A lot of people from this area may know who he is, but if you've never read Common Sense and the Rights of Man, I highly recommend it. Guy Fawkes was a little bit more liberal, in his radical in his approach. And even George Carlin, the great comedian in the 80s, says, you know, they just don't care about you. And that's the truth. The red-blue team, they don't care about you. They don't care about you at all. The only people that really care about you and the candidate this year, those are going to be the people on the gold team. People like Adam Kokesh, Jordan Page, Judge Napolitano, Ron Paul, those are all the modern heralds of liberty. And Jo Jorgensen is no exception to that. Let's not let her message become just another footnote in our history books. You need to get out there, get people voting for the gold team, bring some friends with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Our next speaker is an expert in leadership and speaks around the world on the topic of leadership. He was a martial arts entrepreneur, and he ran a spectacular write-in campaign for Congress 2 years ago here as a libertarian, going really against the odds, but it was a great campaign. Give it up here for Jim Bouchard.
You know, I learned two really important things about the people of Maine when we ran our campaign in 2016. First of all, I learned that most of the people in Maine are actually libertarian. But second, I learned that most of them don't know they are yet, right? And that's something we have to change. Now, I want to shout out a couple of people. Sean and Will have been keeping this party going for years and years and years. Would you guys please recognize them? Give them a nice round of applause. And a group that I just met today, an amazing group. These are the guys right back here, the Young Americans for Liberty. They've been following this tour all day long. These are terrific guys. That's our future right there. Make sure you meet them. Make sure we support them, because they're the ones that need to be taking office. Now, what I mean by what I said about the libertarian thing is that when I listen to people all over Maine, I found that most people in Maine, right, we're fiercely independent. We want to live our own lives. We don't like outside interference. All right? We especially don't like the government to tell us what we can and we can't do, right? Most of all, we don't want to be working for the government. We want the government to work for us, right? And that's really what the libertarian message is. That's what Joe's going to share with you today, all right? You have a choice. Today, too many people are voting against things, against the candidate. The driving factor there is fear. Right? We're afraid maybe that someone else is going to take control, someone's going to impose control, so you vote against. All right? With Joe, you have another option. You can vote for someone whose sole focus is assuring that you can live the type of life you want to live. Now, the other thing, and I'm glad you brought this up. This crap about throwing away your vote. How many people have heard that before? Oh, yeah. Right? It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Throwing away my vote, pardon my French, did you see that shit show on Tuesday? Right? Throwing away my vote. But there's a weird thing about my vote, my single vote. Statistically, it doesn't make a difference. Not in a presidential election. My vote isn't going to swing the presidential election. Neither is yours, right? It's not going to determine the outcome. However, my vote means everything. The major mistake that the major parties have made for years now is not taking the Libertarian Party seriously. They got a little scared last time around. Our campaign, the pundits were saying we were going to get a 1%, maybe. And we had two major pundits say that they would be surprised if we got a single vote. We got about 5%. We got about 5%, and that means something. All right? And Joe's polling right now at about 5% in most of the major polls, and she's gaining ground every single day. Now, that's well within the margin that can tip this election, right? Now, it's not important, though, that it might swing the election to one major party or the other. But that's the way they're going to spin it, isn't it? And they're going to call us selfish, and they're going to call us spoilers again. But what they're failing to see, again, is that more and more people are just sick and tired of the political industry. And make no mistake, that's exactly what it is. More and more people want a serious return to individual liberty and freedom. And more people want substance and character in their leaders. Not a bunch of frat boys arguing like 3-year-olds over who's telling the biggest lies. Now that's where your vote makes a difference. And that's where Joe makes a difference. And together that's where we're going to make a difference no matter what happens in November. Now if you're already a libertarian, you know what I'm talking about. If you're here kicking the tires, you might just find out something about yourself today. When I started on my whole adventure as a libertarian, people keep asking me, they keep asking me now, well, how did you decide to become a libertarian? Well, I didn't. I listened, I got involved, and I discovered that I had been a libertarian for a very long time. I just didn't know it yet. I do now, and I hope you do too. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Now I want to bring up a person that we've all been waiting to hear. She's an amazing lady. She is a PhD in psychology, lecturing at Clemson University. She started her own tech company. And she's a grandmother who plays ice hockey. I mean, yeah! Let's give a big welcome to Jo Jorgensen.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here. Excuse me. I just want you to know that as a candidate, I don't get as much decision-making power as people might think. My crew kind of tells me where I go. However, the one state I told them I had to go was Maine because of ranked choice voting. So I'm so glad that Maine has figured out how to do it right. And, you know, they were such good friends to Gary Johnson. I'm hoping they'll take a look at me. And what everybody said is absolutely right. So it'd be nice to have your first choice, what you really want, and then move fear down to your second choice instead of having fear be your first choice. So thanks so much for that. And so since I am, and by the way, this is our, how many times have we talked here? I mean, 4. Yes. So usually we go to one big rally a day, but I wanted to hit as many small towns in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, the New England area as possible. So, so instead of giving my formal long speech, I would just like to jump into question and answer, and then I can find out what you're interested in. So, go ahead, Kate, take it away.
So if you have a question, you'll come over here, single file line, and we're going to have time for one question per person, and we are going to be taking limited questions because we do have a schedule. So if you have a question, please come over here and line up. Anybody have a question?
While we're waiting, I'll answer a question I got earlier. Somebody asked me, hey, what about the fair tax instead of getting rid of the income tax? And my answer is no such thing as a fair tax. So income tax goes out. Nothing to replace it. Or let me put it this way, sure, I'll replace it with a fair tax if the fair tax is 0. So that's the only way I have a supposed fair tax.
Maine is a very green state. What is your feeling on the EPA and the federal regulations and state regulations?
That once again, the free market can do that, just like everything else, so much better than the government. And you know, in March, I was in a third-party debate in Chicago, and there was a woman running for the Socialist Party. And in her closing, she said the biggest polluter on the face of this earth is the Department of Defense, the U.S. government. And then she went on to talk about the evil corporations and how we got to get rid of them to get rid of pollution. And I just wanted to go over there and say, are you listening to yourself? You know, you just said the U.S. government is the biggest polluter on earth. So why do you want to go to the very people causing the problem to fix it? And on this trip, thanks. And since you mentioned Maine and you know the beautiful trees, I was so excited. It's been a week by now, right? I met 2 months, maybe it's been 2 weeks. We've been on this bus weeks. I don't know. I forget, what day it is. But we met 2 wonderful women from a free market think tank called PERC in Montana. Have you ever heard of it? PERC. And they gave me a local example in which they had a wonderful, beautiful forest, and the timber company was going to come in and, buy the rights to chop down all the trees. And some of the local residents said, these trees are so beautiful. Maybe we can put in a bid, and maybe we can keep the trees there. So they put their bid in, were shocked that they outbid the timber company, and then they were told, okay, now you got to raise the money. And they're like, okay, how are we going to do this now? They said they raised the money in 2 weeks. So it only took these people 2 weeks to come up with enough money from individuals to outbid a timber company. And now here's the bad part though. After that happened, the government changed the law so that will never happen again. So next time the timber company wins automatically. So I don't understand why anyone would go to government to fix the environment. At the federal and local levels, they're clearly not interested. And one last story, if you don't mind, because I think, I can sit here and talk about freedom and liberty, but that really doesn't give an answer. It doesn't really explain the situation. If we look at the Gulf oil spill, travesty. We all saw the pictures of commercials wiping off the ducks with, the baby ducks with the Dawn detergent. A lot of people pointed to that and said, see, that's why we need government, to keep companies like that in line. What they don't know is that the government had given them a liability cap so that they could drill without severe consequences. Now, had that been a free market, they would have had to have gone to a private insurance company, and the insurance company could have either said, no, too risky, not going to insure you. Now, of course, they could have drilled, but they would have gone bankrupt, as they should have. But or the insurance company could have said, well, it's risky, but tell you what, we'll let you drill, but we're going to come out here every week, every month, whatever, to do a spot check to make sure that there are no problems because we don't want to pay out a claim. So you've got the profit motive, making sure that the environment stays the best, stays clean, stays pristine. Instead, what happened, we had federal bureaucrats who couldn't care less about the environment, who just said, no problem, we'll just have the taxpayers pay for the oil spill. And that's exactly what happened. So I can't think of any problem that the free market can't do better, including that. So thank you for that question. Only one? Usually I don't even get to all the questions. Although, well, that's what happens when we don't go to the, thank you, Elijah. No, he's not a plant, but I know him.
She has no idea what question I'm going to ask.
Right.
Okay. So I'm sure you're aware that 22 veterans commit suicide every single day in this country.
Gee, you sound like a former Adam Kokesh worker. Continue.
It could be. So I was wondering, what would you do as president to fix that epidemic of veteran suicide?
Well, the short answer is stop sending them to places that puts them in a position to where their heads are messed to where they do want to commit suicide, because a healthy person does not want to commit suicide. And by the way, I know that from my training. This is actually a three-fer, and if you don't mind, I'm going to answer all three questions. So, in fact, perfect. I mentioned Ron Paul earlier today. Don't ask me what city. I'm not even sure where we were last night. But a lot of people are surprised to hear that in 2012, and for those of you who don't know, Ron Paul is a huge anti-war person. And in 2012, when he was running for the presidency under the Republican ticket, the overseas troops sent more donations in 2012 to Ron Paul than all other Republicans combined. And when people hear that, they're usually puzzled. It's like, well, but wait a minute. They're in the military. You would think they would want more spending. No, they're the ones over there who are seeing what's going on. And I've spoken with veterans around my travels. I had somebody in Wisconsin tell me that, I've seen things that nobody should ever see in their lifetime. So we need to bring them home. And I can go into, thank you. We are in 160 countries around the world. We spend more money than the next 7 countries combined. And I would turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. That's one leg of it. Another part is healthcare. Unfortunately, we have a problem with healthcare in general. Now, I see the biggest problem with healthcare is that our insurance isn't really insurance at all. That the way any insurance works in any other industry is it only pays for unexpected costs. And because they're only paying for unexpected costs are held relatively low. But that's not how our healthcare works. Everything goes through the insurance company. So let's take car insurance as an example. What if your car insurance paid and this is like the fourth time you've heard this today, right? What if the car insurance paid for gas, oil, and car washes? First of all, you would have absolutely no reason to shop around for the cheapest gas prices. In fact, you might even go to the nicest gas station because they give you free coffee while you wait, and what do you care? You pay with your $5 little copay card, and it costs the same no matter what gas station you go to. Meanwhile, because of that, the gas stations have no reason, or would have no reason, to compete on price, because they simply pass the prices on to the insurance companies. Now, a lot of people think that the insurance companies help keep costs down. But the dirty little secret is the only way that they increase their revenues from year to year is if they increase business, increase the premiums. So of course they've got to turn down some, they've got to deny some claims. Of course, there is limited money, but it's in their favor to pay out more claims every year so that the following year they can increase premiums. And that's what the car insurance companies would do after gas prices went sky high. They'd simply charge higher prices to the automobile drivers, and then you get in this spiral. That's exactly what's happened in our healthcare system. There's absolutely no reason to compete on price. Patients don't shop for price. Healthcare providers don't compete on price, and therefore our insurance companies are held without any accountability, and they pass along the bill to us, and we're the ones left footing the bill. So we need to introduce competition into the system, and I think a good way to start it would be with not only veterans but people on Medicare and Medicaid. But if anybody deserves the best health care that money can buy, it's the veterans, because they were willing to risk their lives for our country. They need to be at the top of the list, not the bottom of the list. And when I hear politicians say we need Medicare for all, what I'm hearing them say is we need VA hospital for all. A top-down monopoly system just doesn't work. So what I would do is I would follow what the state of Indiana does for its employees. I would actually put healthcare dollars into the pockets of veterans. Of course, they would also get the real insurance, just like with your car insurance, you've got real insurance that only pays for a car crash. So they would get the catastrophic insurance, but for their deductible, we would put dollars in their pockets, and they would decide who and where and when and why to spend those dollars. And also, and it's not just, do I go to this doctor or that doctor? It's also, do I go to a doctor or do I go to alternative medicine? Do I go to massage therapy? Do I go to a therapist and talk about my problems, as opposed to a medical doctor who's going to give me drugs? Can I smoke marijuana to get rid of the pain instead of having to rely on opioids, which will cause addictions? So, and these are very simple ways to fix these problems. I think that was 3 of them rolled into one, if I'm counting right. So, multifaceted question.
Hi Joe, my name's Tom.
Hey.
I'm an advocate for cottage industry marijuana businesses, and we passed a great law in Maine, and we watched lobbyists come into our state and completely decimate what the people voted on and turn it against us, so that now every out-of-state businesses can just come in here and decimate us. So we've watched our government just take payoffs basically or something from all these lobbyists. How is a libertarian president going to be able to battle against lobbyists still infiltrating all our senators and our representatives that aren't libertarian?
So are you talking specifically about the marijuana business?
Every business.
Every business?
Every business, yeah.
Well, there's only so much power the president has. Now, you did mention marijuana, though, right?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
That's what I'm advocating for. And
Yeah.
I watched that
Okay.
pass get squashed.
So let me address that first, because, even in states where they've supposedly, and I don't know if this applies to Maine, but I've seen this in other states, even in states that supposedly legalize marijuana, they give out so few licenses, they have so many restrictions that, for instance, in California, people are still selling black market marijuana. Okay, when's the last time you heard of somebody selling bathtub gin? We don't have moonshiners out there providing 40% of the alcohol. It is really decriminalized so that we can have open competition, and so that way, if I were to make it legal decriminalize it at a federal level, then that means the states could only do so much. Now, is it possible that a state could overregulate? Probably not in the way California is. However, because you could just start selling it and not have any problems. But it's possible that part of your problem are state and local government, and the one thing I would do as president is not overreach and get into state and local government. So I'm not sure I have a federal answer except to decriminalize so that that doesn't happen in that industry. So thanks.
Mama Jo, we have a recent division in this country when it comes to police brutality and institutional and systemic racism. What are your plans for that?
Well, first of all, you got to look at how we got here. We have had institutionalized racism. By the way, I was criticized for meeting with the Black Lives Matter leader, which I'd like to point out is not part of the Marxist group. But even if he was part of the Marxist group, we agree on the problems. No-knock raids, qualified immunity, the racist war on drugs. So I like to talk to people who agree on the problems and just disagree on the solution. Their solution is bigger government, and I say big government is what caused those problems to begin with. And I spent a great day with the Black Lives Matter leader in Oklahoma, who, by the way, is not affiliated with the major group. And I said, we all talk about Rosa Parks being the heroic black woman who refused to sit on the back of the bus. And he said, oh, yeah, of course. And I said, did you realize that was a government-run, government-owned bus? And he said, no, I didn't. And I said, think about it. 60% of the bus ridership back then were blacks. What if Uber today were to discriminate against the best 60% of their customers? They would go out of business. Somebody likes what I'm saying. They would go out of business, as well they should. But the federal government, or in this case it'd be the local government, was able to discriminate without any accountability. In the free market, you've got accountabilities, and I could give many other examples. So this is why we don't need to turn to government to solve our problems, kind of like with the environment. So my first job would be to get rid of no-knock raids, qualified immunity, the racist war on drugs. That's going to get rid of some of that systemic racism because it does affect them more. The other thing I would do is immediately stop handing out the tanks, tear gas, and other military equipment to the 8,000 federal, state, and local municipalities out there, police departments out there. This is such a perfect example of what the government does wrong, especially the federal government. We send our money to the federal government, right? They take it, they decide what to do with it. Now imagine in your beautiful town here, what if you had a local referendum and you asked voters, are you willing to raise your taxes so our police department can go out and buy a tank? Most of you would probably say, no, I'd rather keep that money, maybe go out to a nice restaurant or two, maybe have a nicer vacation. I don't want my money spent on the tank. What happens though is the federal government takes our money, then they buy the tanks, and then they go, hey, do you want a free tank? And they dangle these free tanks in front of the police departments. Well, if you're a police department, you're not going to say no, because you're going to say, well, heck, If I don't take that free tank, then, those people in Alabama are going to get it. Those are our tax dollars. So our tax dollars go to pay for stuff that we don't want it to go for. So with what we've seen on the streets, a lot of that, I believe, has been an escalation because, unfortunately, we've lost the local beat officer who knows everybody by name, the protect and serve you see on the side of the cop car. And instead, the federal government, in arming them, in turning them into soldiers, has given them a different mentality so that now it's more of an us versus them. I don't want to be at war with other countries, and I certainly don't want America to be at war with its own citizens. Right.
We have time for one more.
I wanted to say thank you first for coming here and speaking to us.
Thank you. Well, thanks, and thank you for the rainbow. I appreciate it.
I don't know if I had anything to do with that. Thank you.
So you're not going to be a Democrat or Republican and claim credit?
I was never a Democrat or Republican. I personally
Me
hate
neither.
when people say that me voting third party would take away from their parties because I would have never voted for either of their parties anyways.
Yeah.
My vote, I feel, does matter, and it would have never gone to them. So I feel they're completely invalid by saying that we're throwing away our votes or voting for the candidate that we didn't want there when we're actually voting for the candidate we do want there. I feel like some of my questions have been somewhat discussed a little bit within like the systemic aspects of, within a race system. My question falls along aspects of justice reform that fall beyond just racism. A lot of the systemic things that you did mention, I guess my name is Gabriel Scopini and I'm a marijuana advocate. I've been for 20 years in this industry before legalization happened. And I feel that we've seen in this country, we see a lot of need for justice reform on a lot of levels. Within the drug laws is a huge factor. It does end up leading into systemic racism that I guess it's hard to even call it racism because it goes beyond just the color of skin. It goes to what people are wearing or what people look like because of their beliefs. Some people have religious beliefs within different aspects of psychedelic drugs or within marijuana.
And I'd love to speak to that, especially being, now I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I have done work in that area, and psilocybin is showing to be, have great promise for depression, which is a major cause of suicide. By the way, that's the number one disorder that leads to suicide, and it's hard for labs and government agencies and universities to even test it because it's illegal. And so first let me address the systemic thing, and then I don't think I've mentioned this for the my drug part, and stop me if you've heard this before. I need to start bringing a checklist on stage because, as you know, I kind of go through the same things because we tend to have similar answers. But yes, if you look, whites and blacks use illegal drugs at about the same rate, and yet blacks have 6 times the incarceration. But people say, well, maybe they're where they shouldn't be. Okay, but first of all, I don't buy that argument. But even if you do, if you look at prison sentences for drugs that whites use versus drugs that people of color use, you'll see that the prison sentences are longer. So I had a debate with Dave Rubin on the word systemic, which I hate it when people drag me into a debate of what a word means. And I kept thinking we were getting out of it, but systemic does include who you arrest, but even that aside, systemic definitely includes the laws. And the laws are written so that if you're a person of color and you're using the drug that your culture uses, you're more likely to spend a longer time in jail than a white person. That's clearly systemic. And what I've been telling people about the drug laws, and I have had people say, well, I don't use illegal drugs, so the drug war doesn't affect me. And that's when I really kind of bristle up because no, I don't use illegal drugs either, and I never have. I've repeatedly mentioned my drug of choice is bourbon, which is more dangerous than marijuana. And but when's the last time you heard of a liquor store owner going up and down the halls of a high school trying to push gin? Or when's the last time you heard of vodka addicts trying to break into houses to support a vodka habit? Or when's the last time you heard of 2 liquor store owners having a shootout for the best corner? I mean, what we have now is not a drug problem. What we have is a drug prohibition problem. Just like we had it in the 1920s with Al Capone, we've got it now. And we need to end it. And that's what I would do. So, thank you. Are you ready to talk again?
I can.
Okay. I'll let you take over.
Y'all keep it
Thank you
going for
so
Mama
much.
Joy. Isn't
Thank
she
you for your
fantastic?
welcome.
Keep it going for your local representatives and your speakers as well. And of course, lastly, give it up for yourselves because this campaign is about real people for real change. So you guys are what makes this thing happen. And so I'm going to ask, because we've got other places to go to, I need gas money. It takes money to make those wheels go round. So I've got Sean over here, who's got my Magic Joe bucket over here. The 2 treasurers are going to double team me right now. This is your elected treasurer of the state of Maine, and I am the elected treasurer of the state of Texas. So you got 2 people who are coming after your money. So what we need is we need donations of anything under $50 dropped in the bucket if you don't mind. If you want to give a contribution of $50 or more, you can come see me for a special form that has to get filled out because of FEC. Boo. Yes. And if you'd like to stay socially distant, you can go to joe20.com/give. That's jo20.com/give. It's right there on that bus, that big beautiful bus that we do need to fill the gas tank. So, you showed up. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really, really appreciate you. I think you're ready for selfies. So if you would like to get a selfie with Mama Joe, if you'll do a single file line, get your cameras ready on selfie mode, and if you'll just get in line and snap your selfie and go on so that we can get to everybody, we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. You came out tonight. Now I'm going to ask you to put out. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful day. Thank you for coming.
This one?
Yeah, you just want to bring that one back over this way. Mostly I need help with the heavy lifting. Do it. Yeah.